All right, so we're live, guys. Yay! Good evening, everyone. We're live,
こんばんは。
and we're so excited to have our podcast again. It's been a month since our last podcast, and medyo spicy ang topic natin tonight. Well,
How
spicy,
spicy?
very. No, just kidding.
It can be
Mildly.
Mildly
can be
spicy. Pero then, maraming actually daming mga issues and concerns happening on the internet, but today we're going to be talking about something that is probably important to all of us whether we're geeks or not, no? And
Yeah.
that is, should geeks get therapy? Yun.
Ooh.
All right. So my name is John B, and I am part of the Level Up crew. And together with me, I have, of course, our COO, child of owner. Joke lang. John G.
hello.
And of course, we also have our Chibi Otaku Maya. Say hi.
こんばんは、皆さん。
And for this evening, we have a special guest, someone who actually can speak on the topic. May authority. Yes, may authority talaga to speak on the topic. We wanted to talk. We wanted to bring in a friend of the ministry and someone who can talk about therapy. Uh, let's all welcome also Coach Noreen. Yes.
Hi, everyone. いらっしゃい。いらっしゃい。
Hello,
Ayan.
Ate Noreen.
Privileged to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. And again, it is such a also a pleasure that you could join us tonight, no? And siguro ano lang, I just also want to say condolences, but even though he's not here, he is here with us.
Yes,
This-
yes.
No? And
Here.
so tonight we're gonna talk about therapy and kung bakit ba kailangan should geeks get therapy? Kailangan ba ng geeks ng therapy? May mga problema ba kaming mga geeks? No? Kailangan mag-therapy? What do you think, John?
We are gonna unpack that tonight. That's why we have this episode. Cause the answer I guess would be like maybe I don't know. It depends, right? It depends.
Yes.
It depends.
Okay.
Ayun.
Sige,
So,
sige.
Paano ba
So-
natin sisimulan to, John?
Well, okay. Maybe a tiny bit more of background from Ate Noreen. We did claim that she has some authority in this topic. And the reason would be why. So for some people who've watched us before, we are familiar with Ate Noreen. She joined us for a previous podcast some time ago. And they do. How would or would you like to ano na lang?
Sure.
Can you ano? Okay.
I'll describe what we do. My husband and I, Gino, who is now with the Lord, he's alive and happy right now with the Lord. We were professional life coaches. So we're not necessarily psychiatrists or psychologists. We are life coach, and in that sense, that's different from like a doctor, a relationship between a doctor and a patient, and a basketball coach, let's say, with his team member. So,
Right.
ganun ang context ng aming relationship. But even as we are life coaches, professional life coaches, we apply cognitive behavioral psychology. So that is found we call it CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So that is the foundation of our work. No, so as it is applied in life coaching, not in a clinical setting. So definitely, andun yung we have had to study ano yung what therapy is and what I guess what value it gives. So maybe we can begin with that. No, siguro, what therapy is. Let's do definitions first. Is that okay
Yeah.
with?
Sounds good.
Sige, sige. So, very basic lang, even if you just go over it, you type it in Google quickly. So the point, therapy is a treatment intended to relieve or heal a disorder, whether it's physical or emotional, psychological. So it's something that you do in order to relieve a problem when there is a problem, or to actually heal a disorder. So in the context of mental treatment, it's a treatment of mental conditions by verbal communication and interaction. Yun ang kanyang in a nutshell. So in that sense, maganda yung tanong. Why would tawag ito yung do geeks need therapy? And tama yung sagot nyo, it depends. Which I think would be answered when you guys discussed, what the geek culture is.
Mm.
Bakit, why is that put together? Why is there a need why should there even be a need for geeks to have therapy? So maybe you can enlighten us also, enlighten me also as to the geek culture. Although I'm actually quite familiar with that, but maganda mo pag-usapan.
I think as I was mentioning earlier, before the podcast started, for a lot of geeks, we are often relegated to the idea or the thought that we are people relegate the idea to us that we are addicts. No, we are addicted to our hobbies, whether it's like video games or like what do you call this, figures like my background. Hindi po totoo to. Gusto ko sana pero hindi totoo 'yan. No? And so parang um, often because because of that idea that we're addicted, um, parang there's something wrong with us. No, parang ganon. So I think that's why in a lot of cases parang uh, I would say that just because of that people would think that we need therapy. But I think beyond the addiction, because hindi naman kami lahat ng addiction, and I think you would agree with me that addiction is like a spectrum din. Hindi siya parang one size fits all. If you're addicted, that every person that's addicted is addicted the same way, 'di ba? Meron mga tao na highly addicted, meron mga tao that, circumstances led them to the addiction, and then there are mga tao na like ako, I play games, I can stop anytime, wala hindi siya ganun ka strong yung pull sa akin. So, um, but for everything that we enjoy in our hobbies, often because there is a tendency to hyper focus or obsess with our hobbies, it's usually because we're using it as a coping mechanism. And I think that's where really is why therapy is needed, is what are things that we are not really dealing with, kaya kami geek, kaya kami getting into these hobbies, and 'di ba? Or some of us even get addicted. What are the things that we're not dealing with? And I think that's where maybe therapy is needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, kasi yun nga, geeks are often characterized by being very passionate about what used to be non-mainstream cultural points. So it used to be like, the likes of Star Trek, Star Wars, and as things went on, it were, other comics, and then other things like, anime, manga from Japan became a worldwide trend, especially recently, and then other things, video games, and so on. So I guess that's also one of the things that we look at. Like, why are we so passionate about these fictional things, which people are like, it's fiction. It's just it's for kids, or it's for like that, or why are you so into it? Diba? You get back here in the real world. There's something wrong with you because you're not in the real reality. I think that's how a lot of people take it, especially for more conservative minded uh, traditionals or realists, whatever is the right term for that kind of thinking. So yun yung one of the common things stated towards the so-called geek culture. And but the thing is, today the geek culture has quote unquote spread to become more and more mainstream, di ba?
Yes.
Kahit sorry pero kahit random people, like almost everyone plays games in one form or another, video games that is, and then yung mga comic book superhero things are just regular movies now, or TV shows, right? They're everywhere.
Yeah.
So nonetheless, that said, there's still certain parts that are very highlighted, like yung mga social dysfunctional aspects, or why is it that so many of us, quote unquote, have so many anxieties, social anxieties? Like, why are these things so common with
Yeah.
us? So
Okay.
yun, for things
Okay.
to go in.
Sige, sige. That's a good sweep no of the situation with. So ang ganda rin nung I want to go back to to the word that's ginamit ni JB, okay? Is addiction. The word addiction, because of course there's absolutely nothing wrong with having hobbies. Actually, Gino and I, our circle, even way back, no, in college, were the geeks, So that's why, and then yung affinity, right? We played stuff, we hung out, and geeked out over all sorts of things. Um, but and I think sige, let's talk about the kumbaga temperament wise, the non-toxic part first, and then we can go move on to the what makes it toxic. So, dun tayo sa non-toxic muna, no? And the reality is there are many of us, actually not that much, but a smaller segment of society whose creativity is truly triggered by mga artistic work that other people have done. And ito, mga comic books, ang daming artists that got into that because of the art, the drawing itself. And then there are those who are mga who got into it because of the world building sa mga games. They got so fascinated by the world building because there's the storyteller in them. So the reality is may segment talaga whose temperament are drawn in to mga works of art like these, na hindi lang basta work of art like a 2D painting on the wall, or even a really nice painting, but something that's interactive, and that draws them in. Sa MBTI medyo I don't know if you're familiar with the personality type, but those are the ones who are more into the abstract, actually, who are more interested in things that are conceptual and theoretical, and they enjoy creating worlds and interacting in that artistic space. So that is not a problem by itself. That is not a need. There is no need for therapy just because you are into that. So maraming actually very creative artistic people ang napupul in sa ganitong lifestyle or culture. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that there's a problem. That is actually a gift. Daming artists, right? In the geek community. And of course, for some, nag-combine yung kanilang programming ability, yung kanilang math, tapos yung kanilang creative part, nakahanap sila ng avenue that it came together. So, it's really a good place for a lot of people to, as a community, kasi like-minded, temperament-wise and personality. When does it become a problem? It becomes a problem when it does become a coping mechanism that leads to addiction. Basically, lahat ng addiction are coping mechanisms. Honestly, most whether it is, of course, gaming addiction, or alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, porn addiction, even workaholism, is an addiction. Work addiction. The reason we get into addictions is because of the high that we get out of that. We get a dopamine rush, for every time that we level up, or we achieve something. But that's, I guess, the self-awareness part. That's where we need to develop. Am I doing this because I am no longer I no longer am able to deal with the real world, with my regular day-to-day life, and so I hide in this activity where I feel good. Pag yun na yung reason niya, sabihin coping mechanism na siya. And then that's when it becomes problematic. Kapag hindi na there are other areas of our lives na napapabayaan na. That's how we know. When meron tayong mga areas na alam natin that it's better for me, it's a lot healthier for me if I was doing this, something else at this time, but I can't do what I need to do because I need to play my game or whatever it is, because it's the only place I can feel good. Now, that's when we know na, escapist fare na to. So, I played games, medyo luma nga lang yung nilalaro ko, mga Caesar. From iba. My little cities, I loved, building them. But there was I also saw that in myself. There was a point when I cannot do anything else. Hindi ako kakain. Kailangan kong ma-finish itong stage na to. And at that point when I realized, sandali lang na nasosobrahan na ako because hindi ko na ginagawa yung the other things that are healthy for me. That was the sign. So I gave myself a schedule. I will only do this when I'm already done with everything else that I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Then I, when you can regulate it and you can manage it, then that means you're not addicted. You're on top of it.
Yeah.
But pag you cannot help it anymore, then that's when we know there is a problem, and hopefully that's when we ask for help. Lapit na tayo, parang sandali lang, naging escapist fare na to sobra. Hindi na ako functional in other areas of my life. So I hope that gives it a background, or at least an idea of when we need help and when it's okay to just be a geek because there's nothing wrong with that.
Of course. That is good to know. But yeah, of course, yun naman talaga yung conviction namin na it's just like any other culture in the world. Like there are some people who are into other activities which are entertainment oriented. Like it can be like really into music. You can
Yeah.
be really into, yeah, as you mentioned, the arts.
Mhm.
There are many activities. Some of
May
them
mga
are
activities nga na ano, people are so
mm,
into basketball.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Not to debase people who love basketball. I enjoy basketball
yeah, I
from
mean
time to
the
time.
athletic yung mga sports and athletic stuff, athletic activities. Um and yeah, so all of these things I think, 'di ba, are given or allowed by the Lord for different positive purposes. They can be
Mm.
leveraged in positive purposes. Similarly, as we have already established, there are toxic and I would say yung corrupted ways of it being used. So
Mhm.
even such a thing as what is traditionally considered to be a very positive activity, mga sports activities, can be twisted in a negative way. Like
Mm.
kung may magiging over competitive, may mga injuries, or for activities like nagiging venue for gambling. So like any activity can be
Twisted.
broken or twisted in these ways. Anyway, so going back, so yung sa geek culture in particular, um like we mentioned, like it tends to draw in, 'di ba, certain types of people.
Yeah.
And for some of that, it's very healthy, 'di ba? Like if it's just artistic expression or engaging the imagination, storytelling, these are very normal, very good, wholesome things, 'di ba? Um However, yun nga, also mentioned coping mechanism din siya for also a great many that
Yeah.
they find that there. And even before coping mechanism, siguro one of the things I also think about, like for example, I just came back from Japan, and one of the big things they do there is yung cosplay.
Mhm.
For us in the Philippines, it's not as, how do you say, intense that it used to be before. But there used to be a larger stigma against that kind of activity. Why? Sorry. And John, can you take over?
Oh.
No, I guess the question is parang why would there be a stigma to something activities like that, no? And I guess I'm trying to follow from John's thoughts, pero hindi ko kasi alam kung saan siya papunta. but but I
Sorry,
guess
sobrang na ano yung ubo ko ngayon eh. But
yeah,
I
go
mean,
on.
there were stigmas around it because like from mainstream, but also in even as a geek, parang nakita mo na grabe yung intense ng passion nila. And then some people even build their identities around the culture,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
So,
Yeah.
and it's not just cosplay. You see this in other fandoms.
Mm-mm.
They build their identity around it, and it's at that point that people are like, is it too much? Are you doing it
Yeah.
to an unhealthy level? Because
Right.
for some, it can be.
Yes.
Say that it's all unhealthy. Like just doing a cosplay is not unhealthy in
Yeah.
of itself. Dressing up for fun, etc. Diba?
Mhm.
Um, which is another hot topic that we stumbled into recently, but we will shelf that for a separate time. But yun nga, so parang there's a lot of parang identity tie-ins there.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the things. Like it's not addiction, but it is identity it's driven.
Right,
Ang
right.
tipong I find myself here. But the thing is, yun nga, that because this thing is it's a little nuanced more because sometimes it's also I find my community here. So
Mm.
for people who play games, who do cosplay, who are into any, but there's so many other different geeky activities. It's like, andito nakita ko yung people who would support me, who would back me up, who give me that community, that comfort. There's also that.
Yes.
So that part, alam natin, in of itself is not negative unless they're leading these people to do other things which are like morally problematic.
Correct, correct.
So there's a lot of overlaps kasi and we have to
Right,
figure how do we identify identify
right,
and,
right.
and untangle those.
Right, right. So very, very good points, no? And actually, it's one of the reasons why I appreciate, your ministry, because there's such a need for discernment because it's so powerful a place for people to identify with kasi it's so engaging. You play the part, your character becomes you in a way, the character that you play, lalo na you invest in that depending on what game you're doing. Sometimes I know of a couple na na-shock na lang yung wife niya kasi hindi nila alam yung savings pala nila pinambibili ng gaya ng kung ano-anong yes, he spent, na-shock siya, na-max out yung mga credit card, paying for mga items, in certain games. So, definitely, like on all things, it's moderation. Pero where does the stigma come? We have to be honest about it. The stigma comes from the reputation that follows those who have gone overboard. Diba? So, syempre, it's hard na ako hindi naman ako overboard, pero bakit nadadamay ako? Kasi marami nga. Marami nang na nakikita natin addicted. And that's the thing. A lot of people, when they start out, they start out because of the community, the belongingness, and then they fit in, and then wala na. Pag nag-fit in na sila, they forsake the world that they come from. My parents, they don't understand me. These are my people. And then they start identifying. So that's actually, in a way, kind of dangerous too. Because saan ka ba dadalhin yan? Saan ka dadalhin nung people that you identify with? And that's why I praise God for your ministry. Because kailangan in every area, kasi some people, parang, as you said, may stigma, parang kailangan ng geek ministry. Kasi merong mga geeks. That's why kailangan, right? And it's always best to be where the people are. So if the Lord has given you that interest, and you know that it has to be managed, you've taken responsibility for that, then you know that may gamit ka dun sa space na yun. Kasi marami talagang naghahanap ng belongingness, and dun nila nahahanap yung kanilang identity. Not only do they get addicted, ito na yung coping mechanism nila, yun na talaga sila. They identify with it, even to the point of forsaking even family and relatives in favor of my online community, which of course is an unhealthy thing already. So itong how do we test ourselves? Kapag kaya mo bang hindi mag-game? Kaya mo bang hindi gawin yung ginagawa mo if for a month? Kapag nag-withdrawal symptom ka na, parang, uy, sandali lang, naging addiction na pala to. When you can sense, no? And that's why at church we have this prayer and fasting to regularly purge, yung mga when we realize that we have developed mga unnecessary dependencies. So we purge ourselves of that. Because if we start to think na hindi ko na, I need this is an absolute need for me, then that's a point siguro where we need to process already. Sandali lang. What is it that I am coping using this gaming or this particular hobby as a means of escaping? What am I escaping from? What am I trying to cover up? And ito na yung mga good questions to ask ourselves, no? Do I feel like this is the only place I could belong, and this is where I find my worth? And elsewhere, I can't fit in with them. They don't like me, I don't like them, and I'm not gonna bother anymore. So, of course, pag gano'n, nagiging self-centered na tayo, na basta what I like na lang, what I want and what I like. And of course, that doesn't expand us as human beings. It shrinks our emotional and mental capacity, kasi ayoko na lumabas, dito na lang ako sa world ko. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I know so many really, really good artists who have thrived, in the geek world. They became productive. They actually contributed, and they, si Gino, marami siya mga friends who are actually Marvel artists, who literally are international artists now, and then they draw for Marvel, and I think even for DC. So, and they thrived, they're able to provide for their families in that setting, but they never lost touch of the rest of their life, So, walang masama sa geek world, but yun, kailangan natin maging careful kung tayo ba, we're here because this is where we are, this is our area of excellence, or this is an area where I hide. And if it's used as a place to hide and to escape, then I would recommend, talking to people about it. Maybe that's a time to go to therapy. Ano ba yung mga tinatakpan ko? Ano ba yung tinataguan ko? So that's a way of processing oneself in this area. Okay. So
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Pastor Ricky in one of the messages na how do we know that we are bordering on addiction na talaga, or something's wrong with us na, is that when you take away something, uh, does it make you angry, or does it parang iba na yung character or yung behavior mo kapag tinanggal na sa'yo yung certain something na yun.
yes.
And yeah, and yun nga, parang naisip ko din na if there are geeks who thrive in this environment, ibig sabihin there are geeks na who are okay, who doesn't necessarily need therapy, and that's why I think that the question, should geeks get therapy, is kind of like na 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 parang all-encompassing naman na kailangan natin lahat ng therapy. But I think the better question would be, when do geeks need therapy? And nakita natin, or narinig natin kay Ate Noreen na when hindi ka na in touch with your actual friends, and at the expense of the people around you, and na ayun, yung credit card nalilimit na and everything, and yung mga activities na ginagawa mo, parang yun na lang yung umiikot sa buhay mo. So yung mga symptoms na nakikita natin kapag naging aware tayo doon, I think doon natin makikita at tatanungin natin na, when do geeks need therapy? Tama ba, John and John?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
That's a good
agree ako dyan. I think it's talaga eh. Like I was saying din kanina, na parang ang hirap, no, kasi geek ka na nga, may stigma nga na against you, tapos magte-therapy ka pa, stigma din yun. So parang alam mo yun, parang double yung stigma, di ba? And I think there's a tendency din talaga na for geeks to think, and there are a lot of geeks kasi that are usually intellectuals din. And so parang hindi ko kailangan ng therapy, kaya ko to, yung ganun. Kaya ko yung what I'm going through. And ako, in my experience, I discovered na parang mukhang okay sa labas, pero pag after a while, they're geeks because they're enjoying their time with whatever hobbies they have and the community they are in. Pero after a while, pag kinausap mo talaga ng masinsinan, malalaman mo meron talaga silang underlying na issues that they're probably not dealing with, no?
Yeah.
So I think that's when ako, experience ko yung parang okay naman tong taon to, di ba? Tapos, okay, gets. Parang eventually you understand why they're into their hobbies. Eventually you understand why they're so passionate about because there's stuff na parang they don't want to deal with. No? And as someone who can identify as being a quote unquote intellectual, I also understand the idea na parang I don't need therapy. No, parang I can do this on my own. I'm smart enough. I can handle my own emotions, etc., etc. No, so how do you deal? Parang ako naman at the same time, how do you deal with that? Paano mo mako-convince ng isang tao na hindi
In
there's
denial
no
ka.
in denial ka. At saka yung hindi, it's therapy is not a bad thing, 'di ba?
Yes, yes. That's a great point, no? Perhaps the first thing that needs to be dealt with is the stigma against therapy. You know? In the same way that, yun nadapa ka, lalagay ka ng band-aid, or you strained your foot, you know?
Yeah.
The stigma that I have to lie down and raise my foot and elevate, the ice method, is there stigma in having to ice it and compress and elevate my foot? That's what you do in order to recover. And the reality is, it's a lot of, well, I understand that there's a stigma to therapy kasi you in the past, di ba, parang pag nagpa-therapy ka, crazy.
Yeah.
Yun yung connotation, there's something. But the reality is, it's really just processing. It is processing. And it's just it's like talking to a friend, at least in the context of a life coach. It's like talking to a friend. The difference is the friend that you're talking to is equipped,
Right.
with guiding you through the process. But really, there are a lot of people who don't undergo therapy, but they get well because they have friends that they can talk to, mentors that they can talk to, who really give them wisdom and guidance.
Mm.
Ngayon, ideally we all have that, no? And we could, we have a church that welcomes everyone. But in a sense, that is what therapy kind of does for us. It allows for us to connect with somebody. Para ganito yung analogy namin ni Gino dyan before eh. When one computer is kumbaga nagkaroon ng virus, let's say it's an anxiety thing that they cannot process because that anxiety is overwhelming them.
Right.
We sometimes kinakapos na yung RAM nila. Kabit mo siya to another computer. That is more stable. Alam mo yun? And pag nakabit siya ngayon doon, ipaprocess mo coming from the other computer that has bigger RAM, with better specs to
Right.
help process the other computer and remove i-run mo yung virus, tawag dito,
It has the programs
yes.
to deal with the virus.
Yes. Now you
Yes.
can't run directly on the
Original computer.
original computer because the virus nga is there messing it up.
Yeah.
But you connect it to another computer that has the capacity. Then now you're working together with that, bit by bit. Mayroon out mo yung virus, and then
Yeah.
you can upgrade the whole system after that.
Yeah.
So,
You can get it running after. Yes.
right, you can get it running, and then that is what therapy does for us. Of course, that will take some recognition that none of us is all that. None of us is all that. We all could use a time when we can just express ourselves. Kasi mahirap when you're expressing yourself and analyzing yourself at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what happens to a lot of people. That's why they get bottled up. Kasi before they could express themselves, they're already analyzing themselves. And then nile-lecture na rin nila yung sarili nila. Kaya mo yan. Wag kang... So, those are multiple functions. And what going to therapy does for us is it allows us to just, sit back, express. But you don't block anything, let it all out. And then you kind of outsource the processing to someone else who is equipped. And then that person can guide you through the whole process.
Mm.
The nice thing about it is that as you do that with someone else, you start getting equipped. Ganun pala how to manage myself. That's the more emotionally intelligent way of dealing with my challenges. Because the reality is we will all have challenges. That is not something that any one of us could ever get away from. It's a question of how equipped are we in dealing with these challenges. We would all like to say that we're all equipped. But the reality is, hindi to tinuturo sa school. Emotional intelligence is never taught in school. We only measure IQ. So there's a thing called how self-aware are we really? There are things that we are aware of at the conscious level, but there are a lot of things that are also going on at the unconscious level. So when we make the mistake of thinking na hindi, ako na lang on my own, when we isolate, that's actually where a lot of issues aggravate. No? Na tipong, here's a statistic, no? It's women who are mostly recorded for having depression and anxiety kasi they're the ones who come forward. But when it comes to suicide, the higher statistics is the men.
Yeah.
So why is that? Well, logically, we would observe that it's the women who would mostly open up about these things, and the men will take so long. And sometimes it's too late. Ayaw pa rin humingi ng tulong. So that's something that we want to be aware of, that asking for help is actually smart. Okay, it's smart. It's not there's no stigma in that. It actually means you're smart, that you know it, you're aware, and you're doing what is appropriate. It's like na-sprain yung paa mo, tapos hindi, I'm tough, tapos itatakbo mo pa rin, hindi, lalala lang yun. So
So
better.
this is the emotional IQ, being smart emotionally.
Yes, it's actually smart to learn to ask for help at the time that you need it.
Agree. I
So,
think, ano din parang, as someone who, when I became a Christian, parang as I was walking in my walk and maturing in my walk, na-realize ko, spiritually mature in a sense that you go to, but before I get there, ang dami ng emotional turmoil na nangyari sa akin. And I remember, siguro before the pandemic, taking parang a quick quiz on how emotionally healthy I am. Sabi niya parang, you're spiritually mature pero you have the emotional healthiness of an adolescent. And I'm like, tinamaan ako, grabe doon. Na-realize ko na parang when it's needed, I go to the Lord, yes. Pero yung bago ako makarating doon, ang dami ko ng na emotional na things na process na hindi actually siya na process ng maayos. So parang it's the realization that parang emotional health is also an important thing that you need to think about, your emotional and mental health, because they're connected talaga, di ba? So parang and as a guy, that's not really taught. Parang, as a guy, you're taught naman, no, you can do it on your own, you can stand in it, alam mo yun, parang you don't talk about
machismo culture naman.
Yeah,
yes, and because
very traditional male culture.
And because malambot ako nang lumalaki ako, the stigma is, parang, nilang stigma, parang, kung mag-share ako ng feelings, mas lalo lang ako i-insultuhin na bading. So parang, wag na lang, hindi na lang ako mag-share ng feelings ko, tatago ko na lang yung feelings ko. 'Di ba? So it becomes like in a sense a way na parang, it's like a volcano that's just ready to erupt anytime. No? And buti ko may outlet, paano kung wala? 'Di ba? And like you mentioned nga, 'di ba, mas mataas ang suicide rates sa mga lalaki than sa mga babae, because men generally, and not all, but men generally don't share what's going on in their lives, 'di ba? Going on in their minds or in their hearts, no?
yes. Very good point. And actually, if you will notice, a lot of the guys, para mag-open up, kailangan lasing. They will bond over, yan, ito na, may ibang addiction naman ito, alcohol addiction. It's only when they're intoxicated that it suddenly comes out, I have this relationship problem, I'm
Saka
without.
sa karaoke.
Right, so that's when because the reality is it's there. And magandang point yun, because really unprocessed emotions don't go anywhere. They have nowhere to go. They just get stuck. And sabihin natin, you have gaming and all of these other things that you do, it just holds it back, but it's there. And until it's released, it's still inside. And eventually, it will pile up and it will reach a point na hindi mo na siya kayang i-hold in. That metaphor na napuno na. Napuno na ako. There's that feeling that I can't hold it in.
Right?
It will come out anyway. That's the thing. It will come out anyway. So better process it when it's still manageable than wait for that point when it's completely become unmanageable. So that is why I'm saying recognizing the need for therapy is actually a smart thing. It's an emotionally smart thing to acknowledge. Perhaps another analogy. We watch yung mga NASDAQ diba? Yung mga you have cars na nag racing cars.
Right.
Yeah, NASCAR pala. So iba pala yun. Okay,
Nasdaq is stock market, but it's alright.
stock
So
market,
NASCAR,
right?
NASCAR.
So yun, as you notice may pit stop.
Yes.
Walang car racing event na walang pit stop at walang maintenance. A lot of guys parang feeling nila it's beneath their ego to get maintenance. Well, that's a guarantee for a breakdown, you know, if you don't get maintenance. So etong mga supercar drivers na to, para yan sila, hindi sila yung tipong for the sake of winning, I will not go to the pit stop, dire-diretso na lang ako while all the other cars are going to the pit stop. And diba, and we know that's a foolish thing to do kasi delikado yun eh. They'll break down along the way. That's actually what it's like for a lot of people as well, emotionally, mentally. We need our regular maintenance, just like we get, you know, physical checkups. We also need maintenance mentally, emotionally. So the more we actually set that aside, the more likelihood of the breakdown happening later on. So better get smart, right? Better get smart, assess. Perhaps hindi naman kailangan to ng clinical right away. Just talk to somebody, talk to a friend. What do you think? Do you think I should process this with a professional perhaps? And then open up. Open up. That's the first step.
I think
Yeah,
that's
kasi parang just to use that yung example mo, like the car, you know, in a NASCAR racing or whatever.
Yes, yes.
When there's something wrong with the vehicle, you hear things, it's not performing well, parang hindi na siya, you know, it's overheating and all these things. So in our lives, I guess it's like seeing like, is our life looking healthy overall? Diba? Our personal relationships, our physical health, you know, all the different aspects. Work natin and so on. And down to the spirit, right? Is it running well? Because these things do bleed into each other. And with regards to geekery, parang sa akin lang, it's like the geeky activities are not uh they're not really how do you put it, ways of processing it. They're
Yes.
way they're for me it's like, okay, naglagay ka ng tubig sa car mo para hindi lang siya mag-overheat.
Yes.
But you're not really solving the issue. It's just like, okay, it's palliative. Like it'll help for a little bit, you know, just to, you know, maybe you need to get it to a garage. This is just gonna help you get you to the garage. You get it fixed there.
Right.
So it's not really gonna make a big difference in the long run. So like, okay,
yeah.
blowing steam off and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I think we can put it into the perspective because this is something that you might probably see on television or on movies. Let's say a guy gets into a tussle, into a not a tussle, but gets into a stressful circumstance or whatever. What do? They go to the gym, or
Yeah.
they go play basketball, or they do some physical activity. Tapos doon nila nalalabas lahat ng galit and whatever nila. And they don't really process it. It's just really parang a release of emotions.
Energy, yeah.
And I think that's in the same way that for geeks, we do that eh. Ako aminado ako sometimes when I'm just stressed and I don't really think of talking about it. I just want to just de-stress. I'll play a game or parang I'll get into something, parang I'll watch a show, doon ko ilalabas yung stress ko. No. But I guess when it becomes destructive when that's the only release that you have. That's the only diba, parang outlet that you have na you don't really process what you are going through.
Right, right. Ang galing actually yan nung both the analogy of JG, John G, and yung you know the example. True, maraming coping mechanism. Other people they eat, you know, that's their coping mechanism. Other they shop. Nakadalawa pala si
Shopaholics.
Retail there.
They eat
they game, they eat. But you know, they shop, all sorts of things, or they spend, I don't know, 16 hours on teleserye on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, that happens too.
K-dramas or what.
Dramas. Yes. So these are all ways of actually managing stress, and that's why it's called coping mechanism. But as John G said, no, palliative lang yun. kailangan mo malaman ano ba yung underlying. Kasi kung paulit-ulit, ibig sabihin there's something more to it than just a initial stress or momentary circumstantial stress. It could be that, halimbawa, it's a relationship thing. A parent, a mom, or a dad started complaining about you, and then automatically that's what you do. As soon as you get triggered by them, I'm gonna play a game, or I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do something. And then every time it happens, ulit-ulitin mo yun ang ginagawa. Ultimately, may issue doon. May bottom line doon. It's the relationship with that parent. You know, it isn't just the stress of the moment. There is something there that's causing this pattern to repeat itself. And one of the best ways to siguro for us to see is look at the pattern, observe. When am I driven to do my geeky things? Is it when things get tough and then I run away to this? Or is it just something that I do because this is how I minister to people also? My friends are here. So we need to understand our motivation. Kasi in the surface, it can all look the same. Some people are doing something for healthy reasons and other people can be doing the exact same thing, but for unhealthy reasons. So that's why we cannot tell on the surface. We have to develop that self-awareness. So why am I doing what I'm doing? Hindi, pag tinanggal to sa akin, here's the thing. When it's removed from you, kunyari, you're stressed and then you can't play the game. Or you can't do geek out. You can't geek out anything. What's the emotion that's gonna follow na? Will there be anxiety? Will there be anger? Will there be frustration? Will there be self recrimination or putting yourself down? Kapag naglalabasan na yan, alam na natin. Okay? There's something more to this, there's something more to this. So let's be aware. If it's negative emotions that comes out when you're not able to do the game or the geek stuff that you do, then there's something that needs to be processed. Guaranteed.
Thanks, Noreen. Actually, we have a lot of questions na pala on sa comment
That's very
section
thankful.
natin.
Yeah, and I think we're going towards yung how we can do therapy biblically, no? Kasi Ate Noreen already mentioned yung mga how we shouldn't do the kinds of therapy.
Exactly.
the mga taong
Scientific.
nag-iinom and
Like we know there's
everything.
may awareness tayo and then they're non-healthy things. So now that we're like, okay, we're aware that of course first we'd like to tackle the questions that are being floated out. But
Yes, may
we
muna.
also want to look at after the questions, we'd also like to look at what are some healthy ways that we can develop yung mga tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Maya.
So, actually, may mga comments lang there here about nag-joke lang sila Vince and si Kyle. But the one question that we have here na very relevant is, what do you do with those who get addicted to therapy? So, sa therapy ka na na-addict. I went through years of clinical counseling because lots of churba, But I found myself addicted, realizing I was unable to address things unless I did it at counseling sessions.
Okay, that's a very good question. Baka na-addict sa therapy.
Yes.
Ideally, if your counselor is equipped in this area, masisense na rin niya kapag nagko-codepend ka na sa kanya. Parang, parang napag-usapan na natin to, a couple of times, and I already gave you homework on how to do it on your own. Why are you not doing it on your own and you only do it with me? Honestly, the reality there is, and to be honest, no, it isn't so much the addiction to therapy, but a lot of people, they do feel that way with the person that's counseling them because it's the only place they feel welcome and not being judged
Heard.
and heard. So medyo dumidikit sila sa kanilang counselor or sa therapist because they feel safe there. I would recommend to that person that even as you are getting therapy with the person, and it's good that you feel safe with that person, it's also and I hope that the therapist would also guide you in finding yourself a group, alam mo yun, where you can actually apply the things that you're learning in therapy for yourself and for the sake of other people. Para we expand. We're not just growing and healing internally, but whatever we learn, we pass on. That will develop our personal empowerment.
Yes.
Para we don't always feel like I'm the only one that needs help all the time. So we develop personal empowerment by applying what we learned from therapy. And kasi we have a Christian life coach community. So in our coaching community, and I praise God for this, with some people who join us after 12 sessions, they were under medication for a long time. And then after 12 sessions, sabi niya, I wish I had gone here earlier. Because at the end of the 12 sessions, wala na, I'm not dependent on meds anymore.
Wow.
I just needed all of these tools that empower. Now, I'm sorry to say, not all counseling therapy sessions are very empowering. Sometimes it builds up dependency. So siguro hindi, not to plug naman the self, no, but then syempre kasi we are a Christian life coaching company and organization, and our objective really is not just for people to feel good about themselves. We want people to heal, and at the same time to be so empowered that they can actually be used to help other people as well. So, hindi naiiwan, na hindi nasa stuck na ako lang yung recipient, na ako lang yung recipient. That builds the addiction, that builds the dependency. But when you are trained in the process to actually be a healer also for someone else, it changes our perspective. It changes how we feel about ourselves. It actually builds up our self-worth and self-esteem. And it empowers us to actually make a difference in the lives of others. Siguro that's a kind of community that we need. Kung na-addict na siya dyan, maybe I will give JB, when we're gonna have our next class, and if to reroute, no, and develop a more proactive, a more empowered approach to therapy. Ayun.
I think ano din,
Ganda.
like you mentioned earlier, that parang it has to be channeled yung yung hindi lang siya parang nakadependent dun sa therapy, but rather that it's also being applied in a space. And I think
Yeah.
that's where like I think the primary ministry of many Christians, it should be like small groups, communities, diba? Parang having those communities where it's a safe space for them to be able to express themselves and to also share what they've been learning, no,
Yeah.
without that idea of judgment. And I think mahirap din kasi sometimes to find, ako personally, I don't know if this is true to you guys, but sometimes kasi people find themselves in a community that they feel they belong, but at the same time they're also afraid of being judged in that same community, so they also put on certain masks then,
Yeah.
even when they are already in a community they feel that they belong to, no.
Right.
So it has to be also a completely safe space, that even if in questions like therapy, or in questions that parang if there are things that I don't know, I can still actually process it with you guys, not just because I belong, but because it's a safe space for me to do so.
Yes. And I think that's what Level Up is, right? For the geek community. It's a safe space.
We're
Yeah.
trying to do so, yes.
We're trying to be so, yeah. There are other questions pa dito. There's actually a question earlier. Do you think though that, why geeks get into parang so into these hobbies or escapist activities, because it's a validation now of their self-worth?
Yes. Because yun nga, if MBTI wise, personality type, the people who are more inclined to get into it are those who are more on the intuitive side, not so much sensory. Sensory people, and there's nothing wrong with either side. I don't want to like promote over the other. Sensory people will be focused on visuals, how they look, how other people look, stuff, object, things that, they can touch and feel. More intuitive types are engaged with ideas, concepts, stories, meanings of things. And mas konti yung taong ganun in our country, I'm also an intuitive in that sense. So I fit right in with the geeks, even if I don't have particular anything that I geek out on. But pag nakahanap ka ngayon ng group finally that gets you, wow, ang sarap ng feeling. Parang, yes, I found my community. I remember that moment, because when I went to college, I was always trying to fit in all of my life with all of my sensory peers. And I don't seem to fit in because I don't really care. I don't really care about how I look. I don't care about how people look. There's nothing wrong with it, but personally, it doesn't appeal to me. But when I finally found people na, did you read this story? Did you watch this movie? And then like, yeah, engaged kayong lahat. Parang wow, nakahanap ka ng, I found my people. So it, of course, they get the tendency is to get obsessed because you feel so good at finding a community where you fit in. But
Mm.
of course, that's where you need to come to balance it out. That doesn't just mean na palibhasa magkakatulad kayo, sila na lang ang kaibigan mo. That's actually not true. We are your friends ultimately are the people that you share the values with.
Yeah.
Not just interests. So madaling ma-obsess kapag na-feel mo na nag-fit in ka. But we have to understand that we need to develop, we need to grow our character.
Right.
So hindi lang, enjoying the company of each other. So I hope that, as I know that you level up, you would also meet, diba? And you would also process some things that, if there are people who haven't done that yet with you and you're restarting that, to definitely go so that your character also develops and not just, be engaged in the interests. Ayun.
Right. So yun. That's a lot.
Actually, a month ago, I think, or a few weeks ago, we've had one of the members of LUGN approach us about something. I think it was about RPG, and she was confused about RPGing. So they approached us and had questions about it, and we were able to process it with her, and she was very thankful about it. Na she came to us and to ask about it. And thankfully, we have JB, who is sort of an expert, I think, in RPG, that he was able to talk to her about it and process things with her. So yeah, if the community in LUGN or anyone who has questions about these things about geekery and everything, we are open to your questions, answer them if we can, and to really welcome you in the community of geeks.
Yeah, I think kasi that the question that we tackled then was that the lines between the RPG and real life is sometimes can get very blurred. And parang the person was experiencing parang guilt or parang from doing things in the RPG that normally you would think that is parang what do you call that, if you were a Christian, ay parang hindi yata tama to as a Christian, as a follower of Christ. And so parang we try to process it in a healthy way na hindi namin ginudge yung ginagawa niya sa RPG, because at the end of the day, an RPG is just role playing, but at the same time knowing to yung parang trying to learn to discern the difference between real life and role playing, and parang understanding convictions of the Holy Spirit din. So it's ano talaga, it was a talking process. Hindi siya parang something like, oh, ito mali to, stop doing that. Oh, ito tama to. Hindi siya ganun eh. It was really like a process. And I think it was healthy because we were able to talk about it. We were able to parang share thoughts and opinions on it. And parang at the end of the day, I remember saying that it's really between her and the Lord eh. So it's parang, is the Lord really speaking to you that you should stop doing this?
Yeah.
Or is the Lord telling you na parang you should disassociate what you're doing there with with your real life? Because only you can answer that. Hindi rin kami pwedeng mag-judge sa kanya kung tama ba o mali yung ginagawa niya. No. So, I think like Maya was saying that yung parang part of the therapy is really just talking. Hindi naman necessarily medication kagad or anything, di ba? It's really talking it out and processing the thoughts and to hear other perspectives para hindi ka lang kulong doon sa echo chamber mo.
Yes, exactly. As a matter of fact, therapy is really the talking part. The medication is not considered therapy. That's really more like a a way for you to cope at the moment, given that wala ka pang ibang equipping. Para lang you don't, go direct, you don't go down the negative trajectory. Kumbaga, to just arrest it, but it's the therapy that will help you. And ultimately, the point of therapy is to equip the person and give them the tools, no? Para mas maging yung mind nila will become more and more resilient, and their will and their decision making process become more and more wise. So they can make better decisions. So it's really it's not as there's ayun nga, there should be no stigma. As a matter of fact, if everyone could have a life coach, and ideally in church we do have that, no, in the form of RD groups. So we have small groups that we go to. We process things together as a group. Everyone shares their problems and their challenges. It's so helpful to realize na hindi ka lang pala talaga mag-isa. All of us, we go through this. And I think that's what geeks need to understand, that more than just sharing an interest, you can actually support one another in this area as well. Ayan.
Amen. May question tayo dito. What's the best solution daw for burnt out people if they don't have the option to rest? Are intuitive people easily burnt out if they are surrounded by sensory people or people who are not as intuitive?
Okay. Ultimately, the need there is to, honestly, we all have a need to fit in, that the feeling of belonging in somewhere. And syempre, dito na magiging biblical in a way. Una, hanap ka ng be part of a community that doesn't just make you feel good, but that you think will be healthy for you. Na tipong, if I acquire, mahawa ako sa mga abilities and skills and mindset ng mga taong kasama ko dito, that will make me a better person. So you look for people that are like that, and I'd like to question that part that you don't have an option to rest. No, hindi option ang rest. That is a need, it's a need. We need to rest. And there is no reason for a person to not rest. Do you work 24/7? We have 8 hours of sleep. We have, at least the weekend to rest. I think that's the first thing perhaps that the questioner need to think about. Why do I say there's no option to rest? How is that a possibility? Perhaps I don't value rest enough, and I think this is usually what happens. Kasi I can't ask questions to the questioner, but this is what happens. People who don't rest feel the need to continuously be productive because that's how they manage their self-worth. If I'm productive, I have value. If I stop being productive just for one moment, my value is decreasing already. So that is, of course, an irrational belief. It is not true. Okay? It is not true. So, we have to recognize where is that idea coming from that I don't have an option to rest. Wala niyan even legally, it is talagang provided. We need biblically, legally, okay? We need to rest. Kahit nga yung machine may pit stop racing car na yun, ha? Ang goal nun is mauna, manalo sa finish line. Pero even in the midst of the race, it has to stop and get maintenance. So we have no basis to say that the rest is not an option. So if we're saying that, we inspect what's behind it. Could it be what I suggested earlier, that we think our value is connected to our productivity, and only when we are getting things done that we have value, and as soon as we rest, wala na, bumababa na yung value ko, which is something that we need to recognize to be a falsehood. It is not true, and if it's false, why are you gonna keep believing it? You need the rest. You can only be at your best, honestly, and at your most productive when you get the rest that you need. So hindi totoo yung part na wala, hindi option ang rest. So you need to make time to get rest. Now, that will actually cause the burnout. If you have a belief like that, that's the recipe for burnout. Maraming tao na ganyan. High school pa lang sila, college pa lang sila, ang kanilang self-worth is connected to being excellent. So they don't give themselves an option to stop, to rest, to take a break. That's a guaranteed burnout in the future. So some people want to say na, can you, pwede bang mini-maintenance mo ko habang I'm still running the car? Parang gano'n. I'm telling you, walang ganong option. Okay? You need to park that car and then get the maintenance that you need. Hindi pwedeng, habang tumatakbo ko, ihabol mo yung gasoline into my tank. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work with the car. It doesn't work with a human being. You need to understand. You need to stop. You need to rest. Okay.
Okay. May nag-follow up. I think quick answer na lang for the follow-up. Because I have another question here. Sabi daw, what if daw, in a financial dilemma, kaya hindi daw nagre-rest. Kaya pag nag-rest ka, hindi ka makapagtrabaho. Pag hindi nagtrabaho, hindi ka kakita, etc. Parang ganun yung ano.
Okay. Here's how I would pose the question. Kung mag-breakdown ka, kamusta yung financial capacity mo? Okay. You know, 1 day of rest, okay, minus that 1 day of income, let's say. Oh, but you don't rest, and then you break down, and there's no income at all. At all, zero. So you gotta weigh these things. And I know some people are like that. No, I have to I have to crush it. You have to weigh. Ano yung mas mahalaga ang value? And what are you putting at risk? Your full financial capability is actually at risk when you do not rest. So you need to weigh that. You need to weigh that reality.
I agree. And I think, pag na-hospital ka pa, kumastos ka pa. Eh, kung ano yung kinita mo, wala din, naubos din sa gastos.
Hindi ka na kumikita, mababaong ka pa sa utang. And things get worse, even worse, right?
Yeah. So, ito yung question kanina dito. Wait lang it's often been mentioned that we focus too much on ourselves. We limit ourselves. What's your take daw on the current trend daw that in order for us to love others, we have to focus on self-love muna?
Okay. Here's the thing. I don't want to call that self-love. I call it self-care. Okay? There's a difference. When you love yourself, then all of your, it's all papasok sa loob. This is where the biblical thing comes in. The reality is, human love, we have capacity for love. We do. As soon as we're born into this earth, we tend to love our parents. Even if they're not nice to us, because we come from them. But you see, human love is finite. Okay? It's finite. Nauubos yan. When people start treating you negatively, you stop loving them. Okay? So it's finite. So you can't generate more love. Kumbaga, limited capacity lang yan. If you keep using that love, na nabuburn ka sa tao, so gagawin mo, papasok mo internally, mauubusan ka rin kasi it's like you can't produce more and then you're eating it up. So this is where it comes in the biblical side of the therapy comes in. You need to be receiving love. Okay? You need to be receiving love. It can't just come from you back to you. Okay? So you need to receive love, and from there, you are able to actually better care for yourself. And then when you're able to better care for yourself, you learn to better care for other people around you. That is the actual process. You don't just love yourself, you receive love. And this is where the spiritual part comes in, because we do have an unlimited source of love. We do have an unlimited source. We have the Lord, and perhaps in the community that you have, as you help one another, that love gets passed around, and hopefully people will recognize that actually ang pinaka-source ng love nito is the unending supply, is God Himself. Ngayon, so you don't just love yourself so you can love other people. Honestly, sa lahat ng cases na ganyan, those who love themselves end up just loving themselves. They don't learn to love others. What we want to happen is for you to receive love, ask for help, get therapy if you have to, and meet with these wonderful people here on screen. You be part of a small group of loving people, and receive love, learn self-care, and then you learn to care for other people. So that's the actual healthy process. We don't want to say that they will be lovers of themselves. Actually, ang nangyayari doon, parang nagiging nakaka-cannibalize mo yung sarili mong capacity for love. Just you produce it and then you use it up for yourself, and then later on you don't care about others. Actually, that's what's happening, no? I just want to do whatever I want. Ganyan yung mga new generation na nakikita ko ngayon. So let's not call it self-love, para lang mas clear. It's not wrong, because the Bible says naman, love others as you love yourself. But perhaps it's the better way to call it is self-care or self-stewardship. Then that way, it's an equipping thing. It's an empowering thing for you to actually be there for others as well.
I think you took the thoughts right out of my head. I've always thought na parang mali lang kasi the world would look at self-love. Oh, you have to love yourself first before you can love others. Ganun. But really, it's really allowing yourself to be loved by God.
Yes.
So that pag puno ka na, you can overflow that love to other people.
Exactly. So yeah, the first step is to receive the love, and that love is available. That love is not hindi yan in limited supply, tuloy-tuloy na supply yan. So if you don't if you don't know that yet, if you haven't met the, you haven't experienced that, these guys will explain it to you. When they have a meeting, right? Just be available and get to know them.
I don't have any questions so far from the comment section anymore. Pero baka kayo guys may questions pa.
Wala naman. Actually, maybe it's already 9:45. Maybe we can have the closing statements,
Yeah, sige.
which I do have. And then it's sort of like the nuggets na learning nuggets na nakuha ko from Ate Noreen. And one of them was yung receiving love and how yung organization nila is geared towards the empowerment of their what do you call them, patients or
No, the individual,
and
yeah.
yeah, the individual na they're not just there to receive therapy uh every time they go there. It's more of like a learning process then for them, learning how the people who are equipped to do therapy on them, they learn from them too, and then therefore they are equipped themselves to do it to themselves and also to others.
Mm.
And then the part where receiving love, you receive love, and so that we can overflow and be able to be of help to others. I remember I was just counseling din yung D group member ko about it, kasi sabi niya parang bigay lang siya ng bigay. Paano na siya? Paano na yung sarili niya? Parang nakalimutan na niya, binigay niya na ng lahat, wala na naiwan sa kanya, ganun. And I told her that it's kind of like yung oxygen sa sa airplane, na ang instruction sa atin dun lagi is to put the oxygen on yourself first before you put the oxygen on the person beside you na nangangailangan ng oxygen. Or if it's a child, then you put the oxygen on yourself first and then on the child. So ganun yung self-care, na in order for you to be able to be of help to others, you care for yourself first. You give yourself the oxygen first so that you are able to live longer than the person beside you who is already dying, di ba? Na you can give the oxygen to them. So ayun, and I was reminded also of this verse na when the Lord of comfort is comforting you, he is also the source of our comfort, and he comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. So it's not just us receiving everything, the comfort, the love, but it's also we are also being taught to share that love, to share that comfort to others, so that we can be a blessing to them. We can show who Jesus is through the love that we are giving them. So that's for me.
Praise God.
Ang ganda
Yeah,
ng analogy.
go. Yeah. Oh, great. I was
Yeah,
just
it's just commenting.
writing off that. Okay. Just writing off that. Actually, tama naman. Kasi naisip ko bigla while you were saying it, it's helping to carry each other's burdens, right? So when we carry each other's burdens, we also need to be capable of helping each other. So parang I do remember a friend of mine, yung shinare niya sa akin is like very malalim, complicated, mabigat yung mga issues na face niya sa life niya. Lots of baggage emotionally, spiritually, and so on. And like ang sabi niya, medyo nuclear hazard levels daw. And not everyone is equipped to handle that. So for me, it behooves us, if we are in a state now, we have to learn, especially as Christians. It is by our love for one another that they know that, diba, that we are. And it's not just like go out there and love. I mean, on one side, yes, go out there and love, correct. But on the other, love loving one another is not that simple. Carrying each other's burdens is not that simple.
Yes.
It takes effort, it takes skill, and it takes strength, which we may not have, at least at the start. So we get trained, we learn, we exercise our emotional muscles, we take steps.
Yes.
Sometimes we realize that, oh wow, I can't handle it, or sometimes you realize that, oh okay, God's helping me handle it, and then you learn along the way. So there are lots of things we can learn. I mean, what are super, sometimes the easier things we can learn are like just how to help people feel appreciated, being that someone's paying attention to them. And then on the deeper level, it's like when you really come down to like what sila Coach Noreen does, and like maybe you sit down with them as life, yung medyo coaching relationship, or the group small group relationship na, okay, it's the problems na naman that you help them with. Like, what are the things that you're going through, and then how can we help you process the feelings that you're having? How can God speak into your life? And you don't just apply like, okay, verse application diretso. Not like that, because that's like that doesn't work. Diba? That's very clinical, and not in the good sense pa naman. It's very dry, you know.
Mm.
So it has to be real. Na it's a life on life, diba, as they say. And but yun, like there are lots of things we can learn and pick up na for not which benefits not only ourselves, but the people we live with and the people we're trying to love. So so yeah.
Thanks.
We do get a lot of these things from the Coach Noreen and her group. And sometimes we would post to within the group that we have now, oh hey, there's a series that's running that's talking about this topic. You know, people can come in. Sometimes it's free, sometimes there's a small fee, depending on who's running it. And you get to learn skills. You get to, kumbaga, ano yun, like the computer analogy earlier, you get to install new apps which will help you deal with viruses, di ba?
Yes.
Magtayo ka ng firewall sa PC mo before you venture into the internet. The internet is full of malware and viruses and things that just want to ruin your computer and hold it hostage. But yeah, basically you try you try to build yourself up, not just for your sake, but of course it definitely helps you, but also because it helps you help others,
Yes.
diba? And when you all help share each other's burdens, everyone's burdens gets lightened, and
Amen.
that's love, diba? That's loving in a community. That's loving in a good way. So yeah, those are my closing thoughts, and hopefully we can learn to do this better for not just ourselves, but for our fellow geeks out there in the world,
Yes.
whoever you are.
Yes. Nice.
Thank
John.
you. Siguro thank you for the thoughts na you've shared tonight. For me kasi parang one of the significant things that I've learned is that, number one, geek or no geek, no, we could all use the benefit of therapy, especially when or at least be able to process the things that we go through in life. Hindi lang natin siya tinatago or nire-release lang in games or whatever hobbies that we may have, but rather that we really talk about it and then process it with somebody else. And I think um, one of the things that you mentioned as well, and I think this is something that this ministry is always pushing for, is yung safe space. Yung na pwede ako pumunta dito, I can be with quote unquote my people, and be, and it's a safe space where I can still share if I'm really going through something na difficult, no. And we all understand because everybody goes through something difficult, and not everybody's challenges are the same. And sometimes challenges are really difficult naman talaga to talk about, no. And not, also that not everyone will understand, or not, at least not everyone will take the time to listen. And so I think finding that safe space to talk about it and process it is definitely important. I think that's why communities like Level Up exists. I think that's why we have small groups as well. No, the three of us actually here are small group leaders, and we try to create that environment as well. No, that you can talk about whatever is going on without judgment, and to give you, if you need, if you just need a lending, an ear, great. If you need someone to give you advice, we can do that as well, di ba? Really depends on sa'yo din. And so, um, ako, I was thinking then na in the idea that yung self-love nga or self-care nga na mini-mentioned earlier, naisip ko lang parang because the Bible actually does tell us that we have to love others. The Bible actually, Philippians 2 nga specifically says, consider others more than yourself. Diba? Parang do not look to your own interest but to the interest of others. Pero yung tanong na, paano kung ubos ka na? Diba? Pero at the same time, kahit naman ubos ka na, paano ka naman magbibigay kung walang ka naman nare-receive to begin with, diba? And so it's allowing yourself to be loved by the Lord, to be loved by God, and overflowing that love to others. So if we want to also be people who want to follow that commandment na looking to the interest of others, dapat ina-allow din natin ng Lord na punuin tayo, no? Hindi lang, and that includes being able to also talk about the issues that we have in our lives, no? And identifying that if we hold on to that, there is no space for God to love us because we're holding on to those hurts and baggages and whatever it is, diba, na that we may have, no? So yeah, this has been, I guess it's a good awareness, eye-opening. There are some new ideas, and I hope our audience also enjoyed the podcast for this evening. Any last words, Noreen, before we go?
I just want thank you for for having me here. I just want to share how blessed I am that I've been part of so many geek communities, but seldom do you have this opportunity, and also for those who are listening, that you find people common interest, mentally, personality, temperament, but also have these deep conversations that address the need of the soul. So I'm glad to be here and to also support you guys. And for those who are listening, maybe this is an opportunity for you to receive that love that we're talking about here, right? So maybe this is the opportunity for you to reach out also and become part more integrated into this group kung saan they not only care about your interest but also for your emotional and mental and spiritual wellness. So I'm just it's a privilege to be with you guys, and that final statement that you guys each one said, and it boils down to the fact that we can all receive love. You know, hindi yan in limited supply. That's an abundant supply, and just allow it. And you can't allow it if as JB said, no, if you hold things in, there's no space to receive. So open up and allow yourself to receive that love, and see how that will actually start changing your life for the better. So yeah, thank you everyone for having me as a
Oh, thank you, Ate
Amen. Thank you so
Noreen. I
much.
learned so much from you.
All right.
Yes. It has
I
been
guess that's it for this evening, and thank you guys for joining us for this wonderful topic. Actually, we have lots of topics ahead pa naman connected to this.
Part 2 daw, sabi ni Sir Jesse.
Actually, we were thinking about a part 2 on our favorite characters that might need therapy.
Yeah, para siyang case study na naman.
Oo.
These
So,
kinds
yeah.
of characters. How do they need therapy and in what way?
Si
But-
Aaron daw, need talaga ng therapy. Exorcism even.
Oh man.
Kyle,
Anyway.
Kyle is a bit offended daw na we didn't have Attack on Titan backgrounds for this evening.
Medyo masakit pa.
That deserves its own individual. There's a lot to unpack there. A lot of interesting lessons to unpack in that series.
So, actually, last pahabol, one of my favorite YouTube, what do you call this, YouTube channels is called Cinema Therapy. It's these two best friends. One is a director and one is a licensed therapist, and they talk about therapy in the movies that they watch. So pag minsan they talk about characters and about their psychology and about or sometimes they like one time they talked about Encanto and how yung psyche ni ni of the characters there were influenced by their abuela. Alam mo yun, all of these things. So
Everybody needs therapy.
and their idea is that always talaga na parang a lot of these things need to be processed and talked about. And I think in the same manner, I think that's why we here believe in therapy as well, no? Because no man is an island. Everybody has their own issues and problems, and we can benefit from, at the very least, the ear that will listen to us, right? So there. Anyway, so if you are that person, or maybe you just want to have fun with us because we play games and and do random watching of movies and anime and whatnot, you can join us. We are on Discord. John will be typing the link because I keep forgetting what the invite link is.
Ito na.
And then we're also on Facebook, so like our Facebook page or join our community page. We actually have a Facebook community page as well, of a community group. And we'll be happy to listen to you. We also do prayer day. By the way, we pray at night on Saturdays. Whether you want to pray with us or you just want to listen in and leave your prayer items and we can pray for you, that's okay as well. That this is what we do, I guess. So yeah, that's it. Connect with us, join us, and we'll be happy to welcome you. And join us our next podcast, and hopefully we can do the part 2 soon. And we have other topics in store for you guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Ew.
Ayasumi.